Long before the stars were named, before kingdoms rose and fell, there existed a land hidden between the sands and the sea. It was called Avelora, the kingdom of light and harmony. People said it was blessed by the wind itself, that each breeze carried the whispers of wisdom and every sunrise promised peace. Avelora was unlike any other place. The walls of its capital city shimmered with white stone, polished smooth by time and sunlight. Rivers of silver water flowed from the mountains, carrying light across the fields where golden flowers bloomed all year. In the center of the city stood the Temple of the Dawn, a grand circular tower that reached so high, it seemed to touch the sky itself. Within that temple burned an eternal flame, the heart of Avelora, said to be a gift from the stars. The people of Avelora lived simple lives. They worked the land, studied the skies, and believed in the balance of all things. Their ruler, Queen Avelora, was known not only for her beauty but for her wisdom. She ruled with kindness, and under her reign, Avelora prospered like never before. But every light, no matter how bright, casts a shadow. Among the Queen's council was a man named Lord Kale, her closest advisor and master of the Temple of the Dawn. Kale was a man of immense knowledge, but his heart grew restless. He began to believe that Avelora's power was wasted on peace. He whispered in secret to others that the heart of Avelora could do more than sustain the land. It could control it. For years, Kale studied the ancient scripts hidden in the temple's lower chambers, writings older than the kingdom itself. The scrolls spoke of a time when the stars were alive, when humans could command their light. Kale became obsessed. He dreamed of summoning that power, of using it to make Avelora not just a beacon of light, but a ruler of all lands. The Queen, however, trusted Kale deeply. She had grown up with him, called him her brother in spirit. And so, even when whispers reached her ears about his strange experiments and late-night rituals, she dismissed them with a gentle smile. "He seeks only wisdom," she would say. Kale would never harm Avelora. But fate had already begun to move. In the 7th decade of Queen Avelora's reign, a star fell from the heavens. It did not fade into fire like others before it, it shone green and silver, landing deep in the southern sands. The people of Avelora took it as a blessing, but the priests of the Temple of the Dawn read it as a warning. From that night, the winds began to change. They no longer carried songs, they whispered secrets. Animals turned restless, crops withered, and the heart of Avelora flickered for the first time in centuries. The Queen called upon her seers to read the omens. Among them was a young girl named Liana, gifted with the sight. She stood before the Queen and spoke softly, her eyes glowing faintly like moonlight. The heart weakens because it has been touched by greed. One of your own seeks the light not to protect, but to rule. When the flame turns dark, the kingdom will fall. The court fell silent. Kale, standing near the throne, lowered his eyes. The Queen dismissed the seers, thanking them for their guidance, but that night, she could not sleep. The words echoed in her mind again and again. In the following weeks, Kale withdrew deeper into the temple. He claimed to be searching for a cure for the fading flame, but what he sought was something else entirely. Hidden beneath the temple's foundations lay a sealed chamber, a place forbidden even to the high priests. There, in the dust of forgotten centuries, Kale found a relic, a crystal shaped like a heart, pulsing faintly with dark light. It was known as the Shadow Ember. The old texts warned that it was born from the same stars as the heart of Avelora, its twin, but corrupted by pride. If joined together, they could either restore the world, or destroy it. Kale believed he could control it. He believed he was chosen to master both the light and the dark. And so, one night, beneath a sky of pale stars, he brought the Shadow Ember into the chamber of the heart. The Queen felt it before it happened. A chill wind swept through the palace, carrying the sound of cracking stone. The eternal flame in the Temple of the Dawn dimmed, twisting into a strange hue of silver and blue. From the streets below, people gasped and prayed as the heavens flickered. Kale stood before the altar, his hands trembling, his eyes wide with awe. "It's working," he whispered. "I can see the truth of the stars. I can see everything." But the moment the two forces touched, the temple shook. The light of the heart screamed, a blinding flash of white tore through the air. Kale was thrown across the chamber. The relics shattered. The sound of thunder rolled through the city. When the queen arrived, she found Kale kneeling before the cracked altar, blood on his hands and madness in his eyes. "I tried to save us," he cried. "But the stars are jealous. They will not share their power." That night, the eternal flame of Avelora went out. Days turned to weeks. The rivers began to dry, the flowers withered, and the skies grew dull. The once shining city of Avelora began to crumble. The people turned desperate, some blamed the queen, others whispered that Kale had been cursed by the heavens. The queen ordered him imprisoned, but Kale vanished before the guards could find him. Some said he turned into shadow itself and fled into the mountains. Others believed the darkness consumed him. Avelora stood before her people, heartbroken but resolute. "We will not lose our light," she said. "We will rebuild, and Avelora shall rise again." But even as she spoke, a storm gathered over the horizon, a storm blacker than night. From it came voices, faint but familiar, whispering through the wind, "The light is ours now." The storm that followed the night of the fading flame was unlike anything the people of Avelora had ever seen. Thunder rolled without end, shaking the ground like the heartbeat of an angry god. Rain fell in silver streams, and lightning split the sky into jagged pieces of light. When dawn finally came, the world was silent. The once golden city was covered in ash and dust. The heart of Avelora, which had glowed at the city's center for centuries, now stood dark and broken, a reminder that even eternal things can die. Queen Avelora wandered the empty temple, her white robes stained with soot. The silence was unbearable. She could still hear the echo of Kale's voice, his mad cry about the jealous stars. Her guards had searched for him for days, but he was gone. The priests whispered that he had entered the Shadow Vale, the cursed canyon beyond the mountains, a place where even light refused to walk. Avelora stood before the cracked altar and closed her eyes. "Forgive me," she whispered to the gods. "I trusted too deeply." But deep down, she felt a faint pulse beneath the stone, a heartbeat, slow and distant. The heart of Avelora was not dead. It was sleeping. And as long as it slept, there was still hope. Weeks passed, and the kingdom's stability began to crumble. The harvests failed, the rivers grew shallow, and fear turned the people against one another. The queen called for her council, the 7 lords of Avelora, to restore order. But not all of them believed in her vision anymore. Lord Seren of the northern fields spoke first. "My queen," he said, "our people starve. The temples are empty, the wind has turned against us. Perhaps the gods have abandoned you." Perhaps Kale was right. The room fell silent. Avelora's eyes softened, but her voice was calm. "The gods do not abandon us. It is we who stray from them." Lord Seren bowed, but his expression hardened. Others whispered agreement. By nightfall, the council had split, half remained loyal to Avelora, while the others began to scheme in the shadows, seeking power in the kingdom's despair. Far from the city, deep within the mountains, Kale had found refuge in a cave lit by strange blue fire. The shadow ember pulsed faintly in his hands, whispering to him. It showed him visions, the kingdom's fall, the queen's sorrow, and the faint light that still beat beneath the temple floor. "You could restore it," the voice said, smooth and cold. "Take what was denied to you. Bring balance through strength." Kale's face twisted with both pain and wonder. "I tried to save her," he murmured. "But she never understood. She feared power." "Then show her," the voice replied. "Show them all what true power is." And so, Kale began to weave his final spell, one that would bind his soul to the darkness itself. He carved ancient symbols into the cave walls, mixing his blood with the ink of the stars. He spoke words older than time. And when the ritual ended, the last light in his eyes vanished. In its place, two shadows rose, one in the form of a man, the other a swirling storm. Kale was no longer mortal. He had become something else. A month later, the sky above Avelora turned black once again. From the horizon came a fog, thick, cold, and alive. It rolled across the plains, swallowing everything it touched. At its center walked a figure cloaked in blue fire. His eyes glowed with silver light. Kale had returned. The city's bells rang as soldiers took their posts, but their weapons trembled in their hands. The queen stood at the gates, wearing her crown for the first time since the storm. "Kale," she called, her voice echoing through the wind. "What have you done?" He smiled, a sorrowful, broken smile. "What you were too afraid to do," he answered. "I have freed the light from weakness. I have given it purpose." The fog thickened, curling around the city like the coils of a serpent. And from it emerged shapes, silhouettes of the long dead, shadows of the ancestors. They marched beside Kale, their eyes empty and glowing. The battle that followed was not of sword and steel. It was a war of light and memory. The priests chanted prayers to awaken the heart, but it remained still. Kale raised his hands, and darkness poured from the sky like rain. The queen's soldiers fell one by one. The rivers turned to mist. The sky split in two. And in the midst of it all, Queen Avelora climbed the steps of the temple one last time. The temple trembled as she entered. The heart's chamber was cracked and crumbling, but beneath the ruin she could feel it, that faint pulse, still beating. She placed her hands on the stone and whispered, "Wake up, my light. The world needs you once more." Kale appeared behind her, his shadow stretching across the floor. "You can't stop it," he said quietly. "This is destiny. The age of light is over." Avelora turned to face him, her eyes full of tears. "No, Kale. The age of greed is over." She lifted her hands and began to chant the old words, the prayer of creation, the song that once called the first dawn. Kale's anger flared. He reached out, and the shadow ember burned in his palm. The two forces clashed, light and shadow colliding in a storm of power. The city below saw the sky ignite. For a moment it was as if the sun had risen again, pure and white. Then silence. When the light faded, Avelora was gone. Where once stood the shining city, there was now only desert, endless golden sand and fragments of white stone buried beneath. The people who survived fled to the edges of the world, carrying only fragments of memory and song. They spoke of a queen who sacrificed herself to save her people, and of a man who became the shadow of the wind. The heart of Avelora, they said, had vanished, hidden somewhere beneath the sands, waiting to awaken again when the world was ready. Centuries passed. The desert grew, swallowing mountains and rivers alike. Empires rose and fell, and Avelora became a myth, a bedtime story told by firelight. But sometimes, on quiet nights when the stars shine too brightly, travelers crossing the dunes say they hear it. A whisper, soft and low, like the breath of the wind itself. When light sleeps, darkness dreams. But dawn always returns. The desert had no end. For centuries, the golden sand stretched beyond the horizon, swallowing the past, hiding the bones of forgotten empires. But one night, beneath a sky full of restless stars, a whisper returned. A young wanderer named Lyrian heard it first. He was no king, no hero, just a seeker of stories, traveling with his old horse and a compass that no longer pointed north. He followed the whisper through the dunes for days, guided only by the flicker of blue light that danced along the horizon. And when the storm finally broke, he saw it. A single tower, half buried in sand. The lost spire of Avelora. The tower rose like a ghost from the earth. Its stones shimmered faintly, carved with symbols long erased from memory. Lirian brushed away the dust and whispered the name he had only read in ancient tales. Avelora. As his voice echoed, the air trembled. Somewhere deep below, a faint hum answered him. He found a hidden staircase spiraling downward, lit by veins of crystal that still glowed softly after centuries of darkness. The air grew cooler. He felt as though he was walking into a dream that had been waiting for him. When he reached the bottom, he saw it, the heart. Still sleeping beneath a cracked altar, covered in time and silence. The faintest pulse still beat within it, slow as eternity. Near the heart stood a strange construct, a circle of silver mirrors and gears, still humming faintly. Lirian approached it, curiosity overcoming fear. When he touched the metal, it flared with light. A vision filled his mind. A queen in white, standing beneath a falling sun. A man cloaked in blue fire. A city burning, then vanishing into sand. The images passed like wind. When he opened his eyes, the mirrors showed his reflection, but behind him stood two shadows. The queen. And the fallen mage. Their forms were faint, woven of memory and moonlight. Elora's eyes were soft, filled with the same sadness that once carried her to sacrifice. Kale's were calm now, the fire within him dimmed, regret shimmering in his voice. "You have come far, traveler," said Elora. "And yet, you do not know why." "I seek the truth," Lirian whispered. "The world speaks your name in myths. I wanted to see if you ever truly lived." Kale smiled faintly. "Myth is simply memory that survived too long," he said. The queen approached the heart and placed her hand above it. "Avelora sleeps because the world forgot what it meant to listen," she said softly. "Will you listen, Lirian?" He nodded. And so, they began to tell him the story, not of kings or magic, but of balance. Of light and shadow, creation and ruin. Of how every age must end, so another may begin. Days passed, or maybe only moments, as Lirian wandered through the memory of the old city. He saw the people as they once were, living in light. He saw their fall, their pride, their sorrow. And then, he understood. The heart was not just a source of power. It was a bridge, a connection between the world and what lies beyond it. But it could only awaken when a living soul was willing to give it purpose. Elora turned to him. "The heart will awaken again, but it needs a voice to call it home." "You mean, me?" She nodded. "You carry no greed, no thirst for power. Only curiosity. That is enough." Kale spoke then, his tone softer than the wind. "If you choose this path, your name will fade. You will become part of the dream. But the world will awaken anew." Lirian looked at them, two souls bound by love, loss, and eternity, and then at the heart, glowing faintly beneath the dust. "If my voice can wake a dream," he said quietly, "then let it sing." He placed his hands on the heart of Avelora. The ground trembled, the air filled with light. The whisper turned into music, 1,000 voices, singing as one. The sands began to move, rising into spirals of gold. Ruins reassembled themselves, towers climbing back toward the sky. And through it all, Lirian's voice echoed. "Light sleeps, darkness dreams. But dawn always returns." The queen and the mage smiled, their forms fading into the radiance. The heart blazed one final time, then stilled, calm, eternal, alive. When the light faded, the desert was gone. In its place stood a valley of green, where rivers sang and stars reflected in clear water. The world had awakened. Many centuries later, travelers spoke of a hidden valley deep in the desert, a place where the air shimmered like glass and the night sky sang. They called it, the Valley of Avelora. No one knew how it was born, or who the young man was whose statue stood at its heart. A figure carved in white stone, holding a small crystal that glowed softly in the dark. At the base of the statue, an inscription read, "When light sleeps, darkness dreams. But dawn always returns." And somewhere, beyond the stars, two souls watched in peace. A queen and a mage, their love finally free from shadow.